Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're embarking on, well, a pretty mind-blowing exploration of human ambition. We're going all the way from ancient master builders in the desert to the literal revolutionaries who completely flipped the political landscape of the world. We're going to trace those massive epochs of change that honestly made us who we are today. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll explore the wonders of Egypt. Second, we'll cross the globe to meet the first Americans. Third, we'll look at the dramatic era when two worlds collide. Fourth, we'll witness the spark of revolution in Europe. And finally, we'll wrap up by examining the legacies that shaped us.
Just look at the sheer chronological scale we're dealing with here. We're starting way back with the physical permanence of the Great Pyramids around 2500 BC, tracking that incredible Bering Land Bridge migration around 15,000 BC, and fast-forwarding all the way to 1492 when Columbus arrives in the Americas. Then boom, we jump right into the explosive ideological shifts of the 18th century, with U.S. independence in 1776 and the French Revolution in 1789. It's a huge journey.
Section 1. The Wonders of Egypt, the Ancient Mystery. So when we think about things that just last, our minds naturally drift to the sands of the Nile. 4,500. That is how many years ago the Great Pyramid of Giza was built for Pharaoh Khufu. Just kind of let that immense span of time sink in for a second. For literal millennia, this absolute titan of a stone structure stood as the tallest human-made thing on the entire planet. And crazy enough, it remains the only one of the original 7 wonders of the ancient world that's still standing today.
Now, you're probably wondering, how on earth did they pull this off? We're talking millions of stone blocks here, and some of them weigh several tons each. And remember, they didn't have modern cranes or heavy machinery. Nothing like that. Instead, it was this massive, genius network of ramps, ropes, and wooden tools. And the precision? It's unbelievable. They aligned this massive pyramid almost perfectly north, south, east, and west. It's an absolute masterpiece of planning, and to do it, you needed an incredibly organized workforce. Architects, engineers, craftsmen, organizers, all working together like a giant, well-oiled machine.
There's a quote here that says, "The pyramids are not just ancient buildings made of stone. They are powerful symbols of human intelligence, determination, and creativity." And that hits the nail on the head. You see, to the ancient Egyptians, death definitely wasn't the end. They built these colossal tombs to protect the pharaohs and all their worldly possessions for the afterlife. They even used that incredibly intricate process of mummification to literally preserve the physical body itself.
And this brilliantly illustrates something absolutely crucial. A society can only reach these kinds of heights if it has a rock-solid foundation. For Egypt, that was the Nile River. Its predictable yearly flooding created incredibly rich soil for agriculture. That meant enough food to support a stable population, which then allowed for deep religious structures and highly organized planning. Because the river took care of their basic survival needs so well, they actually had the bandwidth to achieve all these concurrent innovations. We're talking about things like developing hieroglyphics, complex calendars, early medicine, and of course, the advanced geometry you'd absolutely need to build those pyramids.
All right, let's move on to Section 2, The First Americans, A Hidden History.
You know, long before European ships ever appeared on the horizon, the Americas were already home to deeply, deeply complex civilizations. This incredible journey actually started thousands of years ago, with early humans migrating from Asia across the ancient Bering Land Bridge. Over countless generations, they spread all across the vast North American continent, and they brilliantly adapted to some wildly diverse environments: thick forests, freezing mountains, scorching deserts, and wide-open plains. They weren't just barely surviving out there, they were thriving, evolving into highly skilled hunters, farmers, builders, and artists.
Just look at the sheer brilliance that existed across this continent. Up north, the Mississippian civilization built these enormous earth mounds and complex social systems in massive urban centers like Cahokia, which was right near present-day St. Louis. Meanwhile, further south, you had the Maya and Aztec civilizations making absolute leaps in mathematics, astronomy, massive architecture, and agriculture. These were incredibly rich, highly advanced cultures, and they were building thriving cities thousands of years before the concept of a modern skyscraper even crossed anyone's mind.
Which brings us to Section 3. Two Worlds Collide, European Arrival.
In 1492, Christopher Columbus's voyage across the Atlantic essentially cracked open a brand new chapter in history, but it was a highly complex reality. On one hand, it kicked off a massive exchange of new technologies, global trade, and cultural ideas. But concurrently, on the other hand, it brought severe, devastating challenges to native populations. We're talking about the introduction of catastrophic diseases, fierce conflicts, and the tragic loss of traditional lands. It was a meeting of worlds that forever changed the trajectory of the entire continent.
So the crucial point here is that the history of this land didn't just freeze, it kept shifting. By the 1700s, growing tensions between the British colonies in America and the British government over in Europe really reached a boiling point. And that brings us to this monumental year, 1776. That's when those 13 colonies decided they'd had enough, declared their independence, and set out to create the United States.
And you have to realize, this wasn't just some local, isolated rebellion. The American Revolution became this pivotal, world-shifting event that inspired independence movements literally all over the globe. The incredible momentum they built in 1776 sent ideological shockwaves straight across the Atlantic, directly paving the way for one of the most explosive uprisings in European history.
Section 4. The Spark of Revolution, 1789, France.
All right, we are now jumping straight into a turbulent, ridiculously high-stakes clash. This is the ultimate David versus Goliath setup. On one side, you've got King Louis XVI and the royal family, right? Living in absolute unchecked luxury with immense royal power. On the flip side, you have ordinary French citizens who are just suffering immensely under crushing poverty, totally exorbitant taxes, and food prices that were skyrocketing out of control. It was a pressure cooker, and the tension was completely unsustainable. Standing literally and figuratively right in the middle of this boiling tension was the Bastille. It was this looming fortress and prison in Paris, and to the people, it stood as the ultimate physical symbol of the king's absolute power, injustice, and oppression. So when these angry, desperate citizens needed weapons and gunpowder to defend themselves, the Bastille, it naturally became public enemy number one. It was the primary target.
And then came July 14th, 1789. On this single explosive day, thousands of citizens marched right up to the Bastille, captured the fortress, and essentially lit the match that ignited the French Revolution. It was this incredible moment of sheer passion and resistance. It proved to the entire world that ordinary people, when they actually stand united, could successfully challenge the most powerful rulers on earth and completely rewrite the future trajectory of their nation.
And finally, Section 5, Legacies that Shape Our Modern World. So, what does this all mean for us? Well, all of these dramatic, sweeping historical events deeply connect back to the modern reality we're living in right now. From Egypt, we inherit this profound reminder of human creativity and the sheer power of organized teamwork, proving exactly what we can build even when we don't have modern tech. From America, we see how those deep, ancient roots and indigenous adaptations actually laid the bedrock for the incredibly diverse modern nation we know today. And from France, well, the legacy of the Bastille absolutely lives on. It's celebrated every July 14th as Bastille Day, representing that enduring, universal human fight for freedom, unity, and equality.
Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on as we close out this explainer. What monuments, whether we're talking about towering physical structures or powerful ideological movements, what will our society build today that will actually survive the next 4,500 years? It really is a true testament to the endless possibilities of the human spirit. Thank you so much for diving into this with me today, and as always, keep exploring.